Hello, this is Ursula Odom, and welcome to Wisdom and Young Legend. Now, the premise behind this show is that there's an old adage that says the young man has the strength and the ability to cut the path, but the old man knows the way. Now, in this case, it's men and women that we're talking about. And today I have an extraordinary young woman that is a young legend in herself. And I decided that this time I'm not going to have an older person and a younger person talking about the same subject, because wisdom is all wrapped up in this person herself. I think from what I know about her, she has taken the wisdom of the elders and balled them all up in one little move forward with all of her strength, energy, and the wisdom. So hello, Joy Dixon. How are you?
I am well. Thank you for asking. Thank you for having me on your show.
Well, thank you. And for my listening audience and my viewing audience, would you please tell them who you are? Now, I have watched you grow up and I know a little bit about you, but I have to tell you, I know you from the dynamic young person that is just talented. But what I'm seeing on Facebook now is like, hello, who is this person? So tell us about who you are.
Yes. So as you said, my name is Joy Dixon. I'm a person who is a public health advocate as well as a connector who is really passionate about bringing the worlds of civic engagement to folks who might otherwise not feel the need to be civically engaged. And I do that in a myriad of ways, through health, through campaigns issues, and now through education equity.
All right. Well, when you say education equity, what does that mean?
So with education equity, I am specifically referring to my current, I would say 9 to 5, which is in which I consult with school districts and community-based organizations, primarily in the Northeast region of the country, to make sure that the educators are getting professional development and implementing a curriculum that is going to really help in some really under-resourced communities. And so, that's something I do in, it's my 9 to 5, but outside of work is where I am really passionate about making sure that we are keeping chronic disease at bay through a plant-based lifestyle, as well as making sure young professionals and our seasoned folks as well are getting involved politically as well as in their communities.
Okay, so plant-based, vegan, is that what that means?
That is, well, yes, for me, that is what that means. I know it's very trendy to say plant-based because there's a lot of folks who might not want to transition their diet all the way to vegan, which means they're not consuming any animal products or dairy products like egg or animal-based milk. But it just includes someone who is really being mindful of the amount of animal-based product they're eating. And so I've been vegan 15 years this summer.
Wow.
This past July. Yes. And so as a Black woman, a young Black woman who's been vegan for this long, I really delight in helping people transition their diets and educating them on how they can have great food that is not going to kill them and raise their blood pressure.
So what was that transitional moment for you? The moment that just made you snap and say, oh, that's it, I'm going vegan. What was it?
Well, there were two. I read this book when I was my sophomore year of college, the summer of my sophomore year, called Heal Thyself by Queen Afua. And I was able to read about these women who were able to heal themselves of different ailments just based on what they were putting in their bodies. That same summer, the catalyst was watching my grandmother basically die. And so as I was watching her suffer from the effects of heart disease and diabetes, I just thought to myself, this could be me. We're eating a lot of the same things. We have a lot of same habits. And so I thought to myself, I can't go out like that. I cannot let anyone else feel the same pain that I am feeling from essentially what are lifestyle diseases, heart disease, diabetes. These are things that can be reversed, hypertension. And so that was the catalyst for me. And so when she passed away, in July of 2006, I said, well, that's it for me. and decided to adopt a vegan lifestyle. Mm-hmm.
So does that mean most of the people around you are the same? Or are you traveling this path alone? And well, tell me about that first.
Sure. No, that's a great question. So when I first became vegan, I had I had some friends who were vegan, so that was helpful. But a lot of my friends that were in college with me were not, and that was okay. I would say now I have my husband is vegan now. He's been vegan 2 years, so he wasn't vegan when I met him though. And but yeah, it's some people. I would say this. Yes, it's important to have social support. I think that really can help a long ways. But what I think is so helpful for people nowadays is that we have so many vegan groups. There's so many more resources than when I transitioned my diet. And I think now it's almost like no excuse because it makes it so easy. At least decide to have one meatless meal.
That's funny you should say it that way because I'm an old country girl. I mean, I grew up in the backwoods of Georgia and on natural foods and what have you. And I think the older I get, the more I want to do those kinds of things. I have my little backyard garden and what have you.
Oh,
and
that's nice.
Just recently I said, okay, every meal that I have, I'm going to have something from my garden. And
that's a great goal.
Even if it's just a red pepper, whatever it is. But the reason I asked you about your support system or the people around you is because I have come and gone as far as how much meat I eat, and it has a lot to do with the people that I'm associating with. And I'm finding it that I'm having to just kind of like break away because there are so many people that just want to eat that meat. And I do too. I mean, some, but I could go meatless for a long time.
Right.
And at one point I almost got there because I was using the statement suicide by food. It was like that's what I was seeing happening, especially around the holidays.
Oh yes.
Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, people eating themselves to death. And I said, no, not me. So I'm really struggling with that right now. And I'm moving back in that direction, not necessarily saying I'm vegan, but I just want to eat more healthy food because I think every 10 years, I notice that something changes that I have to make an adjustment in my body in order to adjust to what has happened. And at one point I was, about 10, 15 years ago, I was on 5 medications. And now I'm not on any.
Oh, and that's wonderful. Congratulations.
Yes, and I don't want to go back there. Okay, not at all. So I know I have to make some adjustments, and sugar is like my addiction. Oh God, that's the next thing I'm trying to kick, to be honest.
Yes.
Okay, so this went in a slightly different direction than what I had thought, but I'm totally enjoying it.
Oh no, that's great. I really could talk about health and wellness and veganism and plant-based diets all day because I love it. It.
Yeah. Well, okay. So that's cool. And have one last thing on that. I have little okra plants. Have you ever had a raw okra?
I have.
It is so good straight off the vine.
It's different with the little prickly, the prickly parts around it. But yeah, I mean, people don't realize, I mean, our food is our medicine. It sounds cliche, but our food is really our medicine. And it's great to hear your testimony of how you were mindful and really paying attention to your body and making those adjustments. Because so many times people find they don't want to make themselves uncomfortable temporarily in order to have long-term success with their health. Because it is possible for a person to get rid of those aches and pains. And when you mentioned about social support, I will say, growing up, we had a lot of vegetables in the home. We didn't really eat a ton of meat, so it wasn't such a foreign concept to me. We stopped eating like pork and beef when I was maybe 7 years old, so it wasn't a foreign concept to me. But I will say this, people are always watching. So I will say after maybe 5 years of being vegan, my dad became vegan. And then I would say, and then even recently, my younger sister, so it's like 15 years later, my sisters have watched me for years on this vegan journey. And one of them has been, following a vegan diet for the past 2-3 months,
Nice.
And I think what helps, what people have told me is that what helps them is that not being preachy, and a lot of times you just live by example. If people have questions, I'm always happy to share, but I think that people are more receptive when you are an example through what you're eating. They see your energy, they see that you're not aging, they see that you're not complaining of some of the other ailments that other folks complain of. And I'm seeing more seasoned people deciding to make adjustments in their diet because, you're only as good as you feel.
Mm-mm.
And so sometimes we can control that by what we're deciding to put in our bodies.
True.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now you mentioned your father, and that's one of the questions I was going to ask.
Uh-huh.
How did you get to be who you are? Like, for instance, what was 5-year-old Joy like?
Oh, 5-year-old Joy was very curious and always, I would say, definitely a daddy's girl. So I was often with him, kind of tagging along with my dad to meetings and things like that. But I was a musical person, as you already know.
I do know that. Little songbird you are.
Yes. And so yeah, I was a very curious, intelligent person. I love to read, and I like to be around older people. I would say because I had older parents, I was always very comfortable around older people, and I was around my grandmother. And so that was where I felt most comfortable, in a library or around older people, just listening and kind of just soaking up all that wisdom.
And that's what I suspected about you too, because the premise is that you have older people that can tell you things,
Mm-hmm.
and then young people with all the energy. But some of us hover around the older people when we're young, so we come out, as they say, older than your years or something like that. And there's a reason for it. It doesn't just happen. You're soaking up, like you said, all of this information that you're getting from people, and you're repeating the things that they're saying in some cases when you're young. And then as you grow older, you understand how to put these pieces together. Like one of the things that my grandmother used to say as a part of a song is, you'll understand it better by and by.
Oh, yes.
So you can hear it. And then all of a sudden one day you go, oh, that's what she was talking about, or that's what he was talking about. So now,
true.
Along those lines, tell me about what Mama said or what Daddy said. What are some of the Mama says and Daddy says that you remember?
So something that first comes to mind is something my mother always says. One, always be about your business. And so what she meant by that was, don't get distracted by television, what other people are doing. Like, set your goal and keep your eye on the mark, and you'll be triumphant. Something else they often told me was that I was fearfully and wonderfully made. And I think that's so important for young women, young Black women, to hear all the time, because you don't always see positive images of yourself in media or in books, although that's changing, fortunately, now. And so making sure that I was going to be a very strong, independent person who could think for myself was something that both of them instilled in me. And then my dad always has a bunch of gems, but I think from both of them, I really took on an appreciation for service, as far as being of service to my community, and also being a person that will strive for excellence, in that it's okay to set the bar high, because you're going to meet it or exceed it. And that's something that I'm really grateful for, because I tend to not see obstacles, or rather I see them, but I'm not going to let that deter me. And that's something I really appreciate, that level of grit that they instilled and resilience they instilled in me.
Wonderful. One of the things that my grandmother used to say to me too, is that you're a blessed child. I
Mm.
had no idea what that meant, but what it did for me is that in a difficult situation, I would
Mhm.
say to myself, you're a blessed child, so you'll get,
Yes.
and when things are going good, I'm a blessed child.
Right.
Jesus. You know, so either I'm grateful or I am hopeful, whichever
Hmm.
one.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what are some of the pivotal moments in your life in general that helped you go one way or another? We talked about your vegan moment, but what about
Mhm.
life in general?
Well, life in general, I feel like I have so much further to go. Um, but I do think my grandmother's passing was a really transitional moment for me because she was my person, like the person who I felt most comfortable with, the one I felt was accepted me for all my quirks and didn't laugh at me for wanting to live overseas and all these fanciful ideas that I had, you know. And people would say, why in the world would she think she would do that, you know? But so I think her passing really made me gave me another level of focus, but also prior to her passing, I was very interested in going to medical school. I
Mhm.
mean, my entire life, you know. And so when she passed, though, I was very discouraged by the fact that, you know, her death was preventable. And I became really interested in how and what and how we can change, you know, the health system and what can people do to live a more preventative lifestyle. So that led me into the area of public health and doing some research around that. And I've worked in various areas of public health, like STD prevention and chronic disease and those things. But I think that was a really pivotal moment. I think another one was, I don't know. I feel like I haven't lived long enough to have so many pivotal moments. I'm sure ask me in 10 or 20 years and I can say, oh yeah, that happened.
Okay, so let's switch. I tell you
Yeah,
what, here's the question. What about
sure.
your vision board? I know you know, even if you haven't physically
Yes.
put one together, what
Uh-huh.
is the vision of the future as far as Joy is concerned?
That's another great question. So, well, the vision that I see for myself is as a entrepreneur. I'm really promoting health and wellness. I'm working on a project now in order to promote a plant-based lifestyle for people who are vegan or plant-based curious. Um, I also see myself really advancing efforts in the areas of economic justice and empowerment for women, because so many times women, I mean, they say, you know, the women control the health of their families and communities, and that just doesn't mean physical health. That means the economic wealth as well. And so, when you can empower women when it comes to pay, and it really makes a difference in what she can do to uplift her community. And also, I've become very interested in child and maternal health, mostly because a lot of my friends my age are starting to become mothers. And I am disheartened by the poor health outcomes of women of color and Black women around maternal health, even women who are highly educated, have access to the best care, and yet there are still some poor health outcomes that are occurring, including death, as we saw with like Serena Williams and the issues that she had with her childbirth process. And so,
Now,
so those are some areas.
I didn't read very much about her health problems,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just curious because you brought it up, and I just
Right.
saw a headline about it just recently. Was that something that was preventable? And well, I probably shouldn't ask that
So, yeah, so apparently Serena Williams already had a history of blood clots.
question.
And so after she gave birth, she mentioned that she was having some sort of pain or she felt off, and the providers weren't listening to her. And so
Oh,
she just kept demanding to get screened, get streamed. And I mean, if she had not been Serena Williams, or if she had not had the level of care, or maybe her partner was also a strong advocate, her husband was also a strong advocate for her in the hospital room, she might have died too. But the issue is that a lot of times the pain and suffering of Black women is not taken seriously by providers, and it's an issue. And some of them even admit that. Even I've even experienced with myself where I was in a car accident and I was in pain. I really couldn't stand or sit down for very long because of the car accident, but I'm not a complainer. I'm not a person that's going to cry and moan about this and that. And so the insurance company had someone check me out. And because I was pleasant, I seemed to not be in distress or crying, that doctor, the doctor that the insurance company had me see, it was like, oh, she's fine. Like, no, I'm in pain. Just because I'm not rolling around on the floor doesn't mean my pain is any less. And so not only because of my experience, but just seeing like, what is the big picture? Because the poor health outcomes of our Black mothers and people who want to become mothers is just a symptom of a larger problem. And that's just health inequality among people of color in general. And this is just a symptom.
Well, I have been at bedside for a number of family members that have had, traumatic problems, and some died.
Right.
And, I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm listening.
So the reason I bring that up is because I've seen the difference in care for people who had people at bedside versus people who did not.
Yes.
And it's kind of scary. There was one situation where just because I was sitting there, I heard one person, during the day, they were fighting to keep the blood pressure up. And then at night, someone came in and was about to give the person medicine and said, okay, but just to let you know, this will bring your blood pressure down. I went, wait, something's wrong with that picture.
Right.
They fought all day long to get it up. And now a side effect of the medicine that they were about to give was going to bring it down. So I suggested they needed to talk about that. And there was a disconnect. And I don't think people understand the importance of supporting a family member when they're there. Because I'm like you. I have been in the hospital, maybe a couple of times, and I'm not a complainer either.
Right.
But one time I heard a change of shift, and they were talking about the patients, and they were going past my room. And I thought I had covered it up real well.
Right.
And the nurse said, oh, this one's going through hell. But, oh, okay. So
Well, at least you let them know what you were going through.
Yeah. But survived it, obviously.
Yes, thankfully.
So tell me, okay, I know your parents at a distance. Right. They're dynamic. Okay.
Oh, thanks.
They are a force to be reckoned with. They make changes in the community, and you don't do that without having a strong will.
Yes.
As a young person of dynamic parents, what was your breakaway moment? For instance, what I'm talking about is the moment you became an adult and had to be yourself without destroying that relationship. How did you do that?
That's an excellent question. I think it was more challenging for them than for me, because they told me I was an easy child to raise because I kind of went with the flow, and I was typical, oldest child, easy, high achiever, whatever you say goes, and I kind of went along with it. But I think the moment was probably, I don't know, it was probably in my mid-20s when I graduated from grad school and just decided I was not gonna come back home to Tampa to live, and I was gonna go ahead and I didn't have a job. Did I have a job? I don't know if I had a job right after undergrad. What I did is I'm like, I'm not coming home. I'm going to make this work. And so what I did was I started a business right after I graduated from undergrad. And so what I did was I did health coaching, and I did like cleansing sessions for people as far as like if they want to do like a body detox. And I also gave health seminars and workshops to different faith-based communities. And so I did that until I found a full-time job. And I think that was the first moment where they were like, oh, she has it figured out. She's fine. which I always knew. And I used to tell them, I said, listen, you have to trust that you raised an amazing person.
There you go.
And what can they say that?
Not much, but smile and say, yes, you're right.
Exactly.
Oh,
but no, but they've been great parents. And it's funny you say yes. I think a lot of who I am is because they do have such strong wills, such big personalities. And I think I'm a great combination of them both. And I see how both of their influences have impacted me in who I am today. And I feel really fortunate. I really feel fortunate because, as an adult, I look back and realize that everyone didn't have that. They had to get it from a mentor outside the home, or they had it from someone else. But also not just my parents, but I had a huge community of support. Like, I mean, you were my advisor for youth council, and I used to go, I was competing in NAACP Excel. So, I mean, you were part of that community. I think about people, from church who just, from different areas. I was involved in youth Congress as a high schooler. Like, I just had this huge community support that just poured in. And for me, I feel really indebted to them. And I feel like it's my duty and my honor to make sure I'm doing something and being productive with my life and tribute to them and people like you.
And you're saying that just does the world for me.
Oh,
yeah, because I'm a fan of yours.
Oh, thank you.
And to feel like I had any part in that, oh, thank you, Jesus, that is so cool.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, you were there, you were with us. I mean, I don't think people give people enough of the credit, or I like to say, people don't give their flowers while a person's alive to hear them. So for me, I like to shower people with this so they know what an impact they had.
It's funny you should say that, because I just did something recently, like in the last couple of weeks, that it surprised me that it took me this long to actually do this. But I called my first cousin, who's 10 years older than I am, and told her that it occurred to me that she was my first role model.
Aww.
And the reason I said that is because when I was a sophomore in high school, a junior in high school, I found out about art. I mean, I was obsessed with drawing because they put me in a class and it was like I'd found myself. And then she was working for an advertising company and had a major coffee company as her client.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I went to college thinking I was going to be a commercial artist. But they put a naked person in front of me and told me to draw them. And I said, I don't know how to do that. So I went to make an apple look like an apple. And they told me to draw this person, which I wasn't used to seeing.
Right.
From the backwoods of Georgia, right? So I
thought you was hard.
So I went a different way, but as it turns out, that is still a part of who I am, because I create legacy walls now, and that is art based, even though it's digital art is bringing history and visual appeal together for education. So I told her that I'm a historical commercial artist.
Yes, exactly. You create your own category.
Right. So to tell her that at this age, it meant something to her. And I was surprised that it was just a revelation after all this time that she was it.
Yeah.
She was, in fact, my first role model.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Yeah. That's great that you shared that with her.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that is in fact the kind of person that I am too. I like those kinds of moments.
Mm-hmm.
If I can make someone understand that they did play a role, I like that because,
Yes.
like you said, most people don't get that.
Mm-hmm.
When I was looking to write my first book, At Sula's Feet, I went
Mm-hmm.
to Felicia Winton, who was black bookstore owner here in Tampa.
Right.
And she encouraged me, we talked for about an hour. And then
Mm-hmm.
finally she said, Ursula, it's not how many lives you affect, but that you affect lives. So every time someone said something to me anywhere remotely like what you just said, I
Mm-hmm.
think of her.
Oh,
Like,
that's wonderful.
oh, that's one. That's one
Yes.
life that I had
Yes.
just a little bit of impact,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of many, I mean, because there are times, because I mean, like at this point, I kind of follow you on Facebook as well. But my mom will tell me every now and again, like, oh, Miss Ursula, I saw her doing her Bethune, Mary McLeod Bethune, and that's encouraging to me as a person who is also involved in the performing arts to see someone still wanting to create art. Like to me, that's you're living your passion with doing that and just being a shining example that you can still do it at any age. So I'm appreciative of that as well. Yeah.
And to that end, one of the things that I have discovered is that the little girl in me, that's why I have that as a question,
Uh-huh.
crawled under my grandmother's bed. My very first memory is that I crawled under her bed and pulled out an old box that had letters, photographs, lock of her sister's hair, and it was just totally fascinating to me. And that's who I am today, the person
Yeah.
that pulled those things together. So
Mm.
it is nice to be able to pull all of these pieces of me together for the good of sharing the story,
That's beautiful.
and I'm loving it.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. All right. Well, I tell you what, the final thing I want you to do is to tell me what your personal words of wisdom are as a young legend, the person that's coming behind you.
Mm-hmm.
What do they need to know that you can help them avoid a pitfall or to succeed a little faster because you're giving them a little nugget?
Sure. I think advice that I would give anyone coming behind me, and advice I even still tell myself is uh, one, face the fear and do it anyway. The fear is going to be there whether you want to be or not, and that's okay. You can say I'm afraid and still move forward with whatever your plan is. It's natural to feel fear. But also, I would tell another young person that whatever your goal is, the time is going to pass anyway. So just think how much further you'll be if you just take one step, two steps until you finally reach that goal. So that a year from now, you can look back and say, I did achieve this goal. Because to me, courage is a muscle, and you don't strengthen that muscle until you use it time and time again. So that when bigger obstacles might come your way, you can look back and say, you know what? This looks familiar to me, but I know I can overcome it because I've done this before. So that's advice I would give someone coming behind me. It's courage is a muscle that you just have to use every day, and don't let the time pass without giving of yourself to others, because someone needs to see you.
Oh, how wonderful. That reminds me of one thing that my late husband used to tell me. He was
Mm-hmm.
a marathon runner,
Oh, wow.
and we would go running or walking or whatever. And one of the things he would say is that if you go a half a mile, that's
Mm-hmm.
the hardest half mile the first day.
Mm-hmm.
But the next day, it doesn't get hard until 1 mile, I mean, half a mile, 1 inch.
Mm.
Because your body already knows you can do it. So when you said about the
Exactly.
courage, that's the same concept. It's so
Exactly.
that once you get past that fear,
Mm-hmm.
get
Yeah.
past not doing it and just do it, then the
Right.
next time it's easier.
Mm-hmm. That's so true.
Yes.
That's so true.
All right. Well, thank you so very much for being
Yes.
my young legend, and wisdom and young legend all wrapped up in one. So
Oh,
it's
thank
been a
you.
joy.
Huh? Well, I'm honored that you asked me, because I certainly don't feel like I'm a legend yet. You know, I definitely have some things I'm working on, but I appreciate you seeing me and inviting me to come on your show.
Oh, thank you. And with that, I'd like to say to my listening and viewing audience, isn't she a joy? And thank you for being a part, and come back next time for another young legend with a lot of wisdom. Take care.